Welcome to Breezin with Bierman, the podcast, part of the Princetonian Now Media Group, also now soon to be distributed by New Pod City out of Trenton, New Jersey. I'm getting local. Please listen to us on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, soon to be Stitcher, and wherever other good platforms are sold. Today's guest, and if I get this wrong, you can correct me, is a sous chef. Sous chef. I was practicing with my wife. A traveler, a thrill seeker. Check out his website, chefsploration.com, i.e. the traveling chef. I love that name. And he chronicles talks about travel tips, hotel reviews, and a very interesting journal describing his 6 months astral summer stay, 2019 to 2020, in the South Pole at McMurdo Station, the largest research base in Antarctica. Please welcome Luis Eduardo Fayad?
Fayad.
Is that your mom's maiden name? Fayad?
No, actually, Fayad is my last name. Eduardo is just my middle name.
Lebanese, Ecuadorian Lebanese.
Yeah, there's a big migration in the 30s of Christians trying to get out of the Middle East, and a lot of them relocated to more friendly places to the Christian masses. So a lot of them relocated to South America.
Yeah, I remember visiting my now wife, who your uncle actually stayed with us in Princeton, New Jersey, went to some concerts, but she had a lot of Lebanese friends. But let's get to this. Let's stick with say what you want to say, but I just want to give some structure. You really don't let grass grow under your feet. What I got out of that journal was that being at the bottom of the world was rewarding, at the same time challenging. It was a roller coaster.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that, going into it, like I knew I had a rough idea of what it would be. And I figured, if one can cook in Antarctica, which is I told people that, whenever I was there, I couldn't help but be amused by the fact that our presence there is just a testament to our species hubris. Like we are in a place that literally nothing is supposed to live except for like a couple of flightless birds and some very fat seals. Like our entire being there is just spitting in the face of God and nature and everything. So like really we should not be there. So if you can cook in that kind of environments, I think you can do that anywhere. So that alone I thought was going to be a very fun challenge.
Right.
And Antarctica itself is unbelievable. I think it was a gorgeous continent. And I also just the people that you meet there, when you're down there, because I mentioned when we spoke previously, McMurdo is massive. I don't think people realize just how big McMurdo is, or how big the stations can get. McMurdo during the summer season down there usually gets up to the 1,200 population range.
So
it's a town basically. It's huge. So there's a lot of different people and characters from all backgrounds. So you meet some pretty interesting people, and you make some pretty good friends, and honestly, friends that I'll probably have for the rest of my life.
Right. Mike, one question before we get to the people and everything. When you got to Antarctica, was that like you walking on the moon? Because you've traveled a lot, but that was like.
So I remember. So I was the first flight down for the season
after a lot of trials and tribulations, like from New Zealand, the weather, the plane, it stops and goes.
So the thing is, so the United States Antarctica program, USAP as it's known, stages its base operations for Antarctica in Christchurch, New Zealand. And so like everyone that's going to Antarctica for the most part, unless they're going to like the Chilean side, stop in New Zealand first, where you do like your training and that kind of stuff. And from there, you catch like a flight down to Antarctica. And so if there's weather delays of any kind, like you have to, it just gets pushed back and back and back and back. So yeah, we were delayed about a week, but yeah. So when we finally got there, like it was just like this very surreal moment. I remember I was walking down the steps and I just stopped at the last one. I mean, I don't want to sound pretentious, but like Neil Armstrong, like just before he hopped onto the moon, just like how many people can actually say they've been to, well, not just been to, but lived on like I said, a continent that we're not supposed to be living on. It is not meant for human habitability. So yeah, it was definitely a very surreal moment when I actually got to touch down. I will admit that I actually did tear up a little bit.
I could say it's otherworldly. I mean, to me, that's just a fantasy that I'll ever be there, unless I have enough money and I take one of those really bourgeois National Geographic cruises or something.
And I was looking into those, and like they're $17,000
Well, I'm
a
not that well.
person.
Okay.
I know, same. And like I was looking into that, I'm just like, I can't do that. So like I have to
I'll,
find a way to get paid to do it.
yeah, exactly. I'll go up to Maine. So you get there and you say it's kind of like it's part town, frat boys, different personalities, science, army people, pretty white. Can you relate? Can you tell? Explain to the audience what it felt like.
I mean, so it was so one thing that I was not super prepared for was like just how bureaucratic and corporate is. I mean, like obviously you're in Antarctica.
The blue tray problem, yeah, among other things.
Yeah, it's very bureaucratic. One thing that I in one of my journals I write about is that that it's so bureaucratic that so most of the operations in Antarctica are handled by contractors that the U.S. government has hired to run stuff down there. And these are giant, either defense contractors or stuff like that. So massive corporations. So with most corporations, there's tons of like red tape and bureaucracy and stuff like that, especially in a place that is so dangerous and so difficult to get to and from. So like, I mean, just like you mentioned, this the getting down there, the physical qualification process, it's called PQing, is so that you have to take so many physical tests just to get down there to make sure that you're not going to have to be, medevaced off the Yeah, exactly.
You had cavities, right? You had to get cavities drilled in record time to get down there, right?
Yeah, I had about, I think I had, God, I can't remember how many, I think I wrote how many hours, but I had like definitely over a dozen hours worth of dental work done over 5 days.
Jesus.
Just because if even the smallest cavity, you need to have filled.
Right.
And
so you paid for your negligence. That's karma.
Yeah.
But you got in there. You still were able to get there.
Yeah, it was worth it in the end. Like I said, it was definitely a once in a lifetime opportunity. But a lot of the thing that's frustrating down there. So like I, as a chef, have never worked in a corporate setting. No chain restaurants, none of that. And
no electric, only gas. You said too, right? That's a big difference.
No, the opposite. There is no gas. It's only electric.
No gas. Yeah.
Which is terrible because electric stuff does not hold temperature as well. And that's not a corporate thing. That's more of a logistics thing. Like where are you going to keep all that propane or all that natural gas to fuel this stuff?
Oh, I see. That's why it could be.
The whole town is basically run on. I mean, there's a couple windmills, but a lot of the power to the station is off of these massive diesel generators that run on jet fuel. So it's all electric. And like I said, I've never worked in a corporate setting. Like I've never worked at a chain, no Chili's, Applebee's, none of that stuff. And that's not accidental. To me, that kind of environment just kind of sucks the soul out of cooking. To me, recipes are more of a guideline rather than something that should be set in stone. But when you're in this kind of environment and like in such a corporate thing, like any kind of deviation, any kind of creativity is stifled, especially as I wrote in one of my posts on my website. The people that go for this kind of work, especially in the kitchen, in the galley as it's known, they use very naval terms there since it used to be a naval base. A lot of these people are very qualified. Like there's people that back in the real world, quote unquote, are executive chefs or like head chefs or sous chefs or whatever. And they come down there to be just like line cooks because they just want the experience of going down to Antarctica. So they'll swallow their pride a little bit and take something that's beneath them, again, quote unquote. And so they know what they're doing. And so people that are in higher up positions of management are, for the most part, irrelevant. And so a lot of them they do a lot of like micromanaging BS, and they kind of try to find problems that need fixing, even though there's not really anything wrong. They're basically just there to justify their existence and their job. So they try to find ways to like, see, I need to be here. And that's extraordinarily frustrating to have someone just like constantly over your shoulder. And it's just a lot of corporate bureaucratic BS.
And you can't just say I quit and walk out, or maybe you could, but it'd be a pain.
Oh, you totally can.
But you'd be gone. You'd be gone in a moment.
So normally when you quit, because we had when I was down there, we had one of the other sous chefs quit, and they usually just send you home like the next flight out that there's room on.
I couldn't quit. I'd flip McDonald's Big Macs just to stay there, though.
Well, she had good reason. She had like some kind of family emergency,
Oh, okay.
and so she had good reason. So I'll give her that. But yeah, usually when you quit, it's next flight out, and I'm sure they're not happy with you. Most people that quit do not get to come back unless they
I'm
have a
sure.
valid reason. Like I said,
Well, after
family
this
emergency. I
journal,
think
you,
she
you
was off
probably
too.
can't come back either. So,
Most likely
I
not.
guess, so what would you do? You just kind of, you seem like an independent guy, an artist. You just kind of shut up and said yes, sir, and yes, ma'am, and just moved on
I mean, kind
and
of. I
drink a
mean,
little bit, go
I
drink.
definitely was not popular. Not
Oh
one.
no.
There's, like I said, there's a lot of I wrote that there's a lot of like big wigs that come down to McMurdo from the real world. Most of these companies have their headquarters in Denver, and
Right.
so like they'll send some corporate pencil pushing stooge or something down there
The
for like
man from Denver.
yeah, exactly. Like for 2 or 3 weeks, just to see how things are going. And oh my God, the way that everyone kisses these people's ass for
That's a
no
little much.
reason. Exactly. It's just like they're like, I get it that there are corporate overlords, but I'm not going to go out of my way to be like, oh, gee, boss, I'm doing swell today. Like that's just not my
The feudal
personality.
overlord has come. Right. Exactly. Right.
That's not my personality. I'm not like, there's definitely a lot of like, it's definitely a lot of optics there. It's like, oh, you should look happier. Like I'm not that kind of guy. I mean, I'm not, just because I don't look happy does not mean that I'm
Right.
upset or something. I'm not going to fake put on a smile for you. And like I'm not a show pony here. I'm here to cook with what I have to work with. Like that's what I signed up for. I didn't take a job to be happy. I took this job to see the continent and to cook good food as well as I could.
You could join a cult. Bring in some other things. Climbing a mountain, crud, your own social anxiety, and living in dorms. Kind of like a college.
Yeah. I mean, so there's you can't go too far from the base, obviously, for not wanting to die in the inhospitable wasteland that is Antarctica. But yeah, so I mean, like, there's a lot of fun stuff to do. There's a hill. It's a mountain for more and less of for lack of a better term, but it's called Observation Hill. It's about 750 feet vertical, and like there's a challenge called like the Everest Challenge, where if you climb it 39 times, it's like the equivalent of climbing from sea level to Mount Everest. So I did that while I was down there, which was great exercise, especially because the food down there is kind of nutritionally empty for the most part. It's a lot of frozen food, canned food, and stuff like that.
Right. Corporate.
And like I said, with what we had to work with down there, we made pretty decent food. I'm very honest there.
Tasty.
But it's not. Yeah, it's definitely, it's better than edible. Like to me, baseline edible is just like, okay, it doesn't taste awful, but at least I'm not exactly enjoying it. But it was definitely better than that.
You worked on it.
But it's not exactly the most nutritionally rich stuff because of the whole canning and freezing process. And then like there's and I feel like, I think they didn't, you mentioned the crud. I'm pretty sure they didn't have that this season just because of all the COVID protocols. But it's just kind of like a really bad flu that runs rampant through the entire station. At one point everyone catches it. Some people get it worse than others. I've always been pretty proud of my immune system. I caught it. I think it only lasted me 2 or 3 days. We had one of the people that worked in the kitchen that caught it, and she had to be quarantined in her own room for like a week almost. Jeez. Yeah, so it's
that can be isolating. Right.
Oh yeah, and the roommate thing's pretty cool. My roommate was a really nice dude named Kyle. He was one of the firefighters. We became close friends. I actually requested to move in with him because there's different types of dorms there. There's like in the main building it's like a 4-person dorm, and I don't want to sleep with 3 other people. I'm sorry.
You're past that. Texas A&M is long gone or something.
I'm not gonna lie. I had it pretty good in college. I never had to. I had suite mate. I had like apartment mates, but I never had a room. I had my own room at all times.
Oh yeah, you're lucky. You're lucky. I have horror stories of my college room at first two. Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean that it wasn't. Some of my apartment mates were pretty shitty with like parties and not cleaning up after them. But I was thankful that I never had to like sleep with someone else who like snored like an animal or anything like that.
Right.
So I was lucky in that sense. But it's very, the whole atmosphere in itself is very high school collegey. Like it's very cliquey, which is something that I did not like. You know, it's like if the cliques form and you're either in them or you're out, or
Oh God.
and it's also very you know, again, just kind of the whole problem with living and working with the same people is that a lot of like management becomes friends and becomes
Ooh,
really
right.
close with their you can't really blame them because like you can't, who else are you can't, it's not like you can, you know, go down the street to make friends with other people. So
But if they start fornicating, lines get crossed no matter what. Emotions get involved.
yeah, and there's definitely like favoritism and that kind of stuff. And like, you know, like there'll be I remember there was like one manager that I got into it with a lot. Like she would definitely nag people like, oh, why aren't you working or doing whatever, like why are you like not hustling or whatever. Meanwhile, that same manager would like pull aside one of the other employees that they liked and like just stop whatever they were doing and just chit chat about random bullshit.
Oh God, it gets
Exactly.
nauseating and irritating. Yes.
Exactly. It's just like, why are you getting on this person's case for not hustling, but then you're actively stopping someone from working because you want to have a little fun chit chatting with them. And it's just like that kind of like hypocrisy and that kind of like just that kind of favoritism is just something that like really rubs me the wrong way. And
Especially, or I mean, you get older. Exact. I mean, yeah, it's like, please get whatever therapist you needed in the past. Go back. No,
like, I don't have time for this childish nonsense.
yeah. But your fiance, you thought the separation would do you good. How did she
Wife
feel about
actually.
all this?
So wife actually.
A wife,
So
right.
well, so it just kind of all aligned. Like the stars all kind of aligned. Everything kind of fell into place for this to work out. So you know, she was getting her master's in Massachusetts where we were living, and then we moved out here to Oregon for her to start her PhD. And so we moved here around like late August to September, and that would be right around the time where if I got the job, I would be leaving to go to Antarctica. And so, you know, I said, I'm going to go for it, see if I can even get it. And then, you know,
Because
for
now's the
her,
time. Like you're starting your life out. You might be
yeah,
getting. Now's the time.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. Because like, if I'm moving to a new place, if I'm leaving immediately after, I don't need to get a job, you know, because I can just, you know, kind of chill for a little bit, and just go. I don't have to try to find a job and then just quit in 3 weeks or however long, in 2 months. And she was, like I said, she was starting her PhD, so it was her first semester was probably the most stressful on her as she gets acclimated.
Intense.
So
Right. Right.
she wanted to be left alone
Oh, perfect.
as much as I could leave her alone if I was here, so that she could, you know, get into
Right.
a routine. So I was like, you know what? How about I do this? This is like a once in a lifetime thing. That way, that gives you time to kind of get into a groove of things, get everything settled here. And honestly, the time, I mean, 5 months sounds like a lot, but I mean, that time just flies
Right.
by when you
Right.
really think about it. I mean, I can't believe we're almost at April already.
Right. Right. And you came home and she was with John or Bill. I'm just joking. So, and you said before we get to two more questions, then we have to go to voices from the crowd. You said some people would have, you don't have to get too indelicate. Some people would get their Arctic wives, Arctic husbands. They kind of cohabitated.
They call it like ice wives or ice husbands. Now, granted, I think that a lot of people that go down there are single, and you know, it's kind of just like a seasonal fling. You know,
Right.
you find your little like hookup buddy while you're down there, and then you know,
It's better than a seal. Yeah.
yeah. Or a penguin. And then you know, you leave the ice and it's done. It's
Right.
like,
Right.
again, it's like a summer camp fling basically.
Yeah.
And then that's about it. Now, granted, some people are not single and they still do that, and it's kind of like they're either in open relationships or it's kind of one of those "what happens on the ice stays on the ice" kind of things.
Yeah. Compartmentalize your life and
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What about the sinister? Before we go to voices in the crowd, you said McMurdo Beach is sinister in the sense that it's a conduit to 2048 when the Antarctic Treaty runs out and you could see something bad happening. Are you sinister?
I mean, I'm definitely cynical. I think that a lot of defense contractors, and like there's been a lot of not studies per se, but there's been a lot of like why are like the government has looked into like why are we here? Like, why are we spending all these resources here? And sure, science is one of the reasons, but really the science that is being conducted there by the US is more of an excuse for our continued presence there. So, as you mentioned, the Antarctic Treaty was signed at sometime in the late 50s. I want to say it was like December something 1959. Basically, it was a pact between 12 countries, including the old Soviet Union, the United States, and several others, um, as to how to treat the continent as best as possible, trying to not, cause any harm, to disturb it as little as possible. And that
No
ends.
military.
Yeah, no military presence. Well, at least no active military presence, because, like I said, McMurdo used to be a naval base. Um, but so in 2048, the Antarctica Treaty expires, and one of the bigger, like, not haha jokes of the station is that, like, once that treaty is over, that's when the corporations come to strip mine the place.
Yeah.
They're all, and they use all, and ironically enough, they're going to use all the science and all the research that's been collected, because they do a lot of geographical research, a lot of topographical research, and like climate research and that kind of stuff down there. All that is going to come very handy when the oil companies come in and try to find where the oil is and start drilling for it. So our continued presence there is more of like, is the science is more there as an excuse for us to lay claim. Like, see, we have a presence here. This is ours. If you have a problem with that, too bad. So
interesting. Okay, a voice. These are random questions from voices from Princeton, New Jersey. You're in Springfield, Oregon. I told some people about you. They looked at your website. What is one item I should always pack? Because you're the savvy traveler. What's one item?
Always have a power converter, or like a power adapter.
Like that.
It's small. It's they're usually like maybe like the size of, like, I don't know, like just like an oversized like wall outlet charger. Always carry one of those, because that always comes in handy. You're always going to need to charge your stuff, no matter where you are.
This is from another. A lot of Americans don't like to travel. They want to replicate America wherever they go. How do you get in a mindset to accept change before you go? If you're one of those people, but you still want to travel, but it's hard for you to, where's McDonald's? No one speaks English, type person.
So that's a little bit harder for me to answer, because I'm one of those people that when I leave America, I want to leave America. I want to immerse myself in another culture. And I think the best way to kind of get over that is to just realize that, like, for example, when people come to America from other countries to visit, how do you treat them? You treat tourists as nicely as you can, and it's the same, and it's the same way in other countries. They want to be good ambassadors to their country.
Yeah. And they feel important helping you and everything.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, and like, don't go to Paris to eat at McDonald's because you want a Royale with cheese. Even though I did that, I'm not gonna lie.
I did it. I had wine too at the same time, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I eat at
it tasted better too.
Restaurants, but like, life is too short, and you never know when or if you're going to be back somewhere. Do you really want to look back and be like, oh man, I really wish I could have tried this while I was in this different country. Instead, I ate a Big Mac. I think that's the kind of, it's just to remember that you might not be back there. You never know.
Right. Good point. Well, my producer's saying we have to wrap it up. Just tell me what's on your bucket list next, and please plug. I love your website. I love the way you write. Too bad we can't get to your approach. I like you write so clearly. It's easy to read. It's accessible. But anyway, what's the bucket list, and give yourself a plug.
So my wife and I in June, one of the hardest things about a travel website is, especially in the last year, is COVID. My wife and I have kind of hunkered down, haven't gone anywhere. We're due to get a COVID shot soon. So in June, we have a trip planned to go to Cancun. We're hoping to maybe go to Chichen Itza, which is about 2.5 hours from there. There's possibility about maybe going to Cuba. But
I've been there twice.
Oh, nice. I mean, it looks beautiful. Everything.
It's interesting.
Yeah. And then, after that, we're hoping to maybe go to, now that we're on the West Coast, like I said, we moved from Massachusetts. I really want to start exploring like Southeast Asia. Beijing is high on my bucket list. I love to go to like big, kind of like not ritual, but like traditional things. Like we went to New Orleans for Mardi Gras. We went to Munich for Oktoberfest. I would love to go to like Beijing or to like Vietnam for like the Lunar New Year.
Yeah,
As
great.
most
That'd be
people, or as most
fascinating.
Americans know it, the Chinese New Year. Stuff like that. That's big on my list. I love to see like I like to go to big cultural festivities. I think that's a good way to put it.
And fun the time. Well, give yourself a plug, and I want to thank you very much. But give a plug first, where we can find you.
So you can find me on Instagram. My username is Chefsploration. It's a portmanteau of the word chef and exploration. Or you can also visit my website of the same name, chefsploration.com, where I write a lot about my travels, where I kind of give suggestions and tips about what to do in if you go to the same places I did. But I also like to give a little bit of like historical context as to like the stuff that's there. Like when I went to Puerto Rico, I talk a lot about like the colonialism and the history that has been there, and how Puerto Rico is still treated kind of like as a second rate. It's not a country, it's not a state, and it's just like the people there are very frustrated by their treatment by the US government, because they don't really have representation or autonomy really, and they're kind of at the whim of the government here. So I like to be very informational. I try to not sugarcoat the reality. A lot of travel writers, bloggers, whatever, like to sugarcoat things, and they like to be like, oh, everything was wonderful here, the people are nice, and the people are usually wonderful, it's great, but you also should not look at everything through rose-colored glasses, and speak to the people about how they are actually, what their lives are like.
And give them content. And you do that without knocking people over the head. You just give the history. Well, thank you, Luis Eduardo Fayad. This has been Breezin Bierman, the podcast, a part of the Princetonian Now Media Group and now New Pod City. Check out his website, chefsploration.com. It's been great talking to you.
Been great talking to you too. Thanks for having me on.